Screwball is one of Spider-Man's more annoying characters, to say the least, but I've always found her concept, at least, to be pretty interesting. She's a parkour enthusiast who likes to live stream her every action. She also happens to be Liz Allen, Peter's high school crush. Now, I thought about what Spider-Man franchise really needed a unique character to stand out from the others, and The Amazing Spider-Man came to mind. Because, I mean, it's in the early 2010s when streaming was just starting to take off, and it desperately needs something truly different to stand out from the Raimi movies. So, what if Screwball is in the Amazing Spider-Man movies? So now I know, first of all, that Screwball is typically a Spider-Man villain, but I personally think that combined with her typically being a Spider-Man love interest, as well as how I personally find it easier to believe in heroes live streaming everything, I've decided to make her a hero this time around instead. I mean, if you really want me to do a villain version instead, I'll try to, because yeah, I know it's going to be controversial for me to change her allegiance, but I personally just think that she'd be a lot less annoying as a hero. That's just my opinion. You can let me know in the comments down below if you disagree with me. Now, who am I going to ask to play Screwball? Well, I'm sure that many of you have your own choices that I'd love to hear about in the comments, but I'm going to be going with Dakota Fanning, because honestly, she's such an underrated actress in my opinion, and she was the perfect age when the first Amazing Spider-Man came out. Plus, she has a very likable personality, and I can imagine her being someone that people would pay attention to. Plus, I can picture her as a badass, honestly. So in The Amazing Spider-Man 1, we witness the debut of Liz Allen, a girl at Peter's school who's a bit of an airhead, but she has a very engaging personality, and everyone still at least enjoys her company. She's nice to everybody, including Peter. Also, on a side note, she and Gwen Stacy are best friends in this version, and we actually get a little part where she and Gwen are talking about Peter a bit, and we see that Gwen has a serious crush on him. So now later on during the gym scene, we see her doing acrobatics on the other half of the court, and during a break, Flash hits her in the back of the head with a basketball, which he of course pretends was an accident. Then Peter of course toys with Flash like he did, and we see Liz looking very grateful at him. Now after Uncle Ben's death, Liz actually offers her condolences, and she tries her best to cheer him up to no avail, but hey, at least she tried, right? Now we don't see Liz again until the Lizard breaks into the school, and she actually tries live streaming the fight between Lizard and Spider-Man, and she almost dies, but Spider-Man's able to rescue her. Now we don't actually see her again until later on in the movie, where we see that she's now wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt, which makes Peter smile a little bit. So now we're on to The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and we see the opening sequence involving Spider-Man chasing down the Rhino, and we see a new superhero is following the action on rooftops, live streaming everything. Now she tries to help Spider-Man out by using her parkour abilities, and Peter is a little weirded out by this, and he starts asking her a bunch of questions, like I imagine he would. But then Gwen calls asking why he's not at the graduation, and when she hears a girl's voice in the background, we see that she's a little bit jealous, but she honestly cares more about the sirens, and Peter assures her that he'll be there soon. He then manages to defeat the Rhino, and she introduces herself to him as Screwball. Now Peter awkwardly shakes her hand, and then she pulls Peter in for one last shot in her stream before jumping off. Now Peter's a little bit dumbfounded, but he doesn't have time to think about this, as he has to rush back to his graduation. However, we see at the same time that he's trying to rip off his suit and get his gown on, Screwball is doing the same thing, and we learn of course that she's Liz Allen. So now later on in the movie, we get a peek at Liz's home life, and we see that her parents kind of ignore her, and that she did have a sister who she used to do everything with, but she died in a car accident. So now the happy and kind persona is revealed to be more of a front, just to hide what she's really going through. So now we learn that her live streaming is really the only thing that's keeping her going. It's the only thing that makes her feel like she's being listened to. But now she's feeling rejuvenated because of her newfound role as Screwball, which we learn was her sister's nickname for her as a child, due to her previous career playing baseball. So now she returns as a recurring character throughout the movie. When Peter was stalking Gwen around town as Spider-Man, fucking creepy by the way, we see him meeting up with Screwball, and they get to have a proper conversation this time around, and Peter asks whether she really knows what it is she'll be putting herself through, and she says that she just wants the world to know that they're all going to be safe. That's why she's documenting everything, because she wants to give people hope, because New York is a city that's seemingly without hope, and she doesn't want Spider-Man to be the only one that's giving it to them. So now the pair decide to team up and go on a couple of misadventures together. He kind of takes her under his wing and tries to, show her how to be a proper superhero. Now, obviously, she's documenting everything at the same time, and Peter helps the bully kid with his windmill, but during the scene, Peter decides to cover up the camera because, he is a child and he doesn't want to scare him. So now we see Gwen watching Screwball's live stream of her and Peter, and she gets noticeably kind of annoyed about it. Now, later on, she and Peter go on their not a date, and she briefly mentions Screwball to Peter, who assures her that he doesn't see her as anything but a friend, and a loose friend at that, and I'm keeping it that way just for the record. I'm not trying to build a romance here, I promise. Now this transitions into their conversation about how he and Gwen will have to be friends going forward, since, they did break up earlier in the movie after all. So now when Electro arrives at Times Square, Screwball shows up to try and help Spider-Man, and Peter is noticeably worried about how powerful he is, so he tells her to just stay back and let him try talking to him. However, when he realizes that he's being filmed, Electro actually tries approaching her, and he asks if everyone can see him on her camera. She smiles and says yes, and she tries to go show him to calm him down, but the snipers then shoot him because they don't understand the situation. So now that's when Electro goes hostile, but she is able to dodge his lightning strikes. Now Electro then yells at Screwball to stand back and keep the camera on him. However, she tries to help Peter out anyway, only to get her uncovered hands electrocuted and her camera gets fried. Now, Peter then manages to carry her to safety, and the rest of the fight goes the same. Now, afterwards, Peter covers her hands up with webbing to, patch them up, and he tells her that maybe she shouldn't do this anymore. She doesn't have powers, and she might get hurt even worse next time, and he just doesn't want her to get hurt because it will be on his conscience. And now that makes her seem really sad, and she tells Spider-Man that being a hero has made her feel better than she's felt in years, more alive than she's felt in years. She then mentions that he saved her once, and it inspired her to try and make a difference in the world, and she wants to bring hope to New York. He then comforts her, he feels a little bit bad, and he tells her to just take some time off and just recover, and he'll give her more training when she's ready. So now we actually don't see her again for a good portion of the movie, as we have to deal with all this stuff involving Harry Osborn and Electro and the Roosevelt train and, Peter, Gwen, and Oxford and all of that stuff. So yeah, I'm sorry, but she's gonna have to sit this out for a while. But she does keep fans up to date on her recovery, and she has some very earnest and heartfelt words about Spider-Man. She wants people to, keep liking Spider-Man, so she's really talking him up, hyping him up. So now we actually don't see her again until after the final battle, and I'm sorry about that. I just cannot imagine her fighting Electro again. I'm sorry. Now this final battle, as you all know, resulted in Gwen's death, and we see Liz attending her funeral, and she sees Peter, and he talks to her about how Gwen meant so much to him and how much he loved her. And, Liz says the same thing because they were best friends. So the pair just hug it out and they have a really good and emotional cry together. But when Peter stops being Spider-Man, that's when Screwball steps up. She's determined to keep hope alive in his absence, and she shows what she learned from being Spider-Man's sidekick. She cheers up bullied children, she stops common criminals, and she genuinely becomes a bit of an inspiration to the city. Now, she ends up actually trying to take the fight to the Rhino, and she's most likely going to die, and she knows it. But, that's what it means to be a hero, and that she's willing to sacrifice herself. So she gives an emotional, seemingly final live stream before she walks into the face of death, now unafraid. But luckily, Spider-Man steps in to help her, which ends the movie on a high note. So, oh boy, now you guys might remember when I made the Kraven the Hunter in the Raimi movies video, I mentioned at the end of that video that I was terrified to do that one because, I wanted to do a video where I lived up to the hype of such a beloved character. Let me tell you, I am even more scared about this one. Like, I legitimately had night terrors about doing this. Like, I've never been so nervous to do a video because, this is a personal thing for me. I find it more daunting to do a video about a character people don't like than to do a video about a character that people do. Because then I have to try and sway your guys' opinion. And I don't know if I'm going to do a good job. I don't know if this scenario won people over. But, I want to do something different because, personally, in my opinion, I just don't think that she works as a villain at all. I just think that she's not realistic enough. Like, she's way too artificial to take as a serious threat, and I just never believed in her as a true Spider-Man villain. Especially because Liz Allen, as I said, is typically a Spider-Man love interest, so I just thought it would make more sense to make her a good guy. And, you know, as well as the fact that, you know, a lot of people said the Amazing Spider-Man movies were not that different to the Raimi movies, and there was no point even making them, which I disagree with, because I think the Amazing Spider-Man did take a lot of chances, you know, that the Raimi movies didn't take. And, you know, but I thought that giving Spider-Man a sidekick would really make it different. And, yeah, I mean, she doesn't have powers, so I tried to be realistic about it. I didn't want Spider-Man to absolutely shut her down, you know, because I didn't think that it would be in his character to be like, you can't be a hero, you can't help people. I just can't imagine Spider-Man doing that. Now, I can't imagine Spider-Man giving her advice, like maybe you're getting over your head, like maybe you should do smaller stuff, or, you know, at least taking her under his wing and trying to, you know, guide her in the right direction. Now, believe me, I did consider the idea of keeping her a villain and having Spider-Man shut her down. Like, I envisioned a scenario where, like, she would become a hero, and then Spider-Man would tell her she can't be, and then she would turn on him. But then I just thought, man, it sounds way too much like Syndrome in The Incredibles. It really does, so I just couldn't do that. So I thought the idea of just keeping her a hero and having Spider-Man accept her and kind of take her in, you know, just to make it different from the other franchises. And, you know, maybe as a good guy, people like Screwball more. I don't know. Because, you know, I thought of the idea of live streaming being her way of, you know, grieving over her sister's death, and then later using it as a tool to bring hope to the people of New York. That was just an idea I had, and I'm sure plenty of you are going to disagree. And as far as Dakota Fanning goes, I know a lot of you are going to be like, huh, when I casted her, but, like, I think she's so underrated. She's not nearly enough, in my opinion. And really, me and my dad have always been a huge fan of her work. Like, I've remembered watching her way back in, like, Cat in the Hat, which is a terrible movie, but still, you know, you gotta start somewhere, and I've been rooting for her. And, you know, I think that she should be in more big budget movies. So, you know, I took a risk. I casted Dakota Fanning as a character that people don't like. And I promise it's nothing personal to Dakota Fanning herself, because I actually tried to make, you know, Screwball a likable character, so I hope I did a good job. But yeah, anyway, enough of me making you guys feel guilty, sorry. Just let me know in the comments down below if you actually liked it or not. You can be perfectly honest with me, because I know it's not what you guys asked for. I put up a poll, and Screwball wasn't on it. This was just a character I wanted to do, because, you know, I wanted to do more videos about female Spider-Man characters, because I don't feel like I make enough of those, and she was obscure, and I love making videos about obscure Spider-Man characters, because then I like to bring them to people's attention, and maybe, you know, help build up a fan base with them, which I know Screwball is never going to have, because I know that she pisses a lot of people off in the PS4 game. Believe me, I'm well aware of that. But yeah, you know, so let me know in the comments down below, did you absolutely hate this, or do you think that I actually did something interesting? Let me know all that in the comments down below. Feel free to be as honest with me as you want. Also, give me more what-if recommendations in the comments down below, whether that's about obscure Spider-Man characters, major Spider-Man characters, or nothing about Spider-Man at all, and I will try my best to do it. If you hated this video, maybe better than this. Who knows? But also make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms. And speaking of social media, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Rinzler_Productions, and I'll see you all tomorrow in the next video.